After getting my ass kicked early in my career because I had absolutely no concept of what I was doing, which I could say at various parts of my career, but this would probably relate more to just trying not to hurt people. We have a hard job. We really do. If we do well, all goes according to plan. We continue to grow. We continue to build our book. Sadly, occasionally things occur that we have no control over whatsoever. The CMO meltdown comes to mind 13 years ago, seems like yesterday. And our most recent, whatever you want to call this thing, black swan event, zombie apocalypse, the end of all things, the before times, I have no idea. I do know that several years from now, we'll look back and wonder what the hell just happened. It's a hard thing to think about. It's a hard thing to think about for us personally. It's especially hard when our responsibilities extend to guiding people who know far less about investing than we do and are terrified of what the future may hold. Should we be in? Should we be out? Risk on, risk off? Who the hell knows? I got lucky. I got lucky because I was so crappy at picking stocks. I figured out that the only thing I could really do was come at clients from a planning angle. So very early on, I realized that if I could solve problems, big problems for people, what I picked to buy and sell might matter less. That was followed by understanding that asset allocation is really the only thing that it comes down to. I then had to learn that if I let my clients select their own asset allocation, they would always use recency bias and confirmation bias. What's the best thing that ever happened to them? They continue to pick that. What's the worst thing that ever happened? They'd remember it, and they'd pick a less than appropriate risk profile, which would, of course, force them to underperform long term. All that stuff's valid, but probably more valid for your compliance people than it is for getting people from where they are now to where they'd like to be in the future, what I've coined as the A to B approach. So what I'd like you to do for just a minute is take a look at the chart in front of your screen. This is a real client. This is an actual client that I started investing for in 2003. Now the chart looks a little bit funny when you look at the asset allocation and all the rest of it, but the story behind it might help out. When I first met this client, we went through a series of discussions. We created a financial plan, and they were very clear. Basically what they said was sometime between 2019 and 2020, they wanted to accumulate on a $4 million investment, roughly $11 million bucks. So I got out my trusty HP 12C calculator and my Excel spreadsheet and a pencil and an eraser and everything else I needed to do. And I figured out, well, wait, if we can average 6.3% per year, we should be able to get you there. And they said, great, how are you going to do that? And I'm thinking, well, let's make some assumptions. And as you can see here, the capital market assumptions I made were not aggressive at all. I'm dealing with equities and I'm assuming 8.5%. Fixed income, I'm assuming 4.1. These are the long-term returns going back probably, 80, 90, 100 years, 1,000 years, who knows. But you're not going to get in much trouble using those types of capital market assumptions. Remember, one of the things we should always do is underpromise and overperform. But even if that were the case, utilizing super conservative numbers always works to your benefit if you follow a discipline going forward. So I ran out the numbers at 6.3%, and what it told me was that I could get this client there sufficiently at 6.3 over that period of 17 years. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but once you put the money to work, shit starts to happen, as you saw on our initial sheet. So here we are, and look what happens right out of the gate. I'm up 28.68% my first year investing for them. Bonds, and I'm using TLT, which is, as many of you know, an exchange-traded fund that mirrors the 20-year Treasury, at 175. So, of course, the clients want to come out of all of the bond investing and put more money in stocks. And I say, oh, that's not really a good idea. In fact, because I had taught them what my process was up front using what I refer to as the resource book, a little educational pitch that I give. I explained to them that if we find that we are running ahead of our projections, we're going to dial risk back in. Their question was, why would you do that? If we're doing well, wouldn't we want to continue to do well? My response, I'm happy to do that as long as you can give me goals at the back end that correlate to us taking this increased level of risk. I'm more than happy to let it roll. And that kind of befuddled them a little bit. They said, but we would have more money. And I said, yeah, well, what would you do with it? You can't retire twice. The kids are through school. Your house is paid for. You've got everything you want. So you'll have some excess cash. Is that worth risking not hitting the objective that you've given me? Basically, the husband said, well, I'd like to make more. His wife, who was really smart and an engineer, said, honey, be quiet. We're listening to Gary, which they did. Now, what's interesting here is you look at year 2. I didn't need 6.3 anymore because I was already up $600,000 in the first year. So what did I need? I needed 3.69. Well, that does not correlate to 50-50. That correlates to right back on the efficient frontier, right at the bend of that hook, just where it starts to go up on the north side. 35 equity, 65 fixed is where I took them. They weren't happy about it. But we learned to live with it. Had a good year in 04, decent year in 05, but look, bonds outperformed. A little bit of stress in 06, but look what happened from here. We were continuing to accumulate money in bonds and equities, both doing well. Then the bottom fell out of the equity market, down 37. But lo and behold, bonds went through the roof because here comes the Fed to the rescue, and they crammed everything down. And this was one of the few portfolios that anybody ever heard of that during the course of that year actually made close to 9%. There was no drawdown in overall value. They continued to accumulate, and in one of the worst years in history went from 6.2 to 6.8. These are actual numbers, folks. Now, continuing down a little bit, we can see we had another big bond market year here, continued to grow, and there we are. There is their goal between 2012 and 2013. So what did I do? I just kept that asset allocation because it had the best blend of risk and return. Did I add more money to equities? Of course I did. When I had overperformance in the bond market, there were some periods in between where bonds were doing great and stocks were kind of lame, where it was closer to 75-25 or even 70-30 fixed income to equities. So I'd roll money back to equities. Now, I didn't look at this as a contrarian approach. I let the market direct where this was going to take me. And at the back end of this thing, average returns all the way through today, overall rate of return, 10.44%. Now, that 10.44% is not just the average of these two. That 10.44 is the dollar-weighted or internal rate of return. Now, I know you guys know the difference. If you don't, go back and crack the books. Bottom line was you need to have money in the market that's moving, and you want to have less money in the market that's not moving. So I did some comparisons to see how this would work out. Let's take a look at those. Well, here we go. Scenario A was the straight line, 6.3. That gets me to 11.2 just in time. Now, what a lot of folks do is they create a financial plan and they put the money to work, and they 50-50 seems like good allocation. You fire and you forget. That's fine. That kind of worked out too. 20.5 million over the same period, but the volatility was off the charts. Speaking of charts, I have that chart, and if you want to see it, I'm happy to share it. Now, a little bit better was scenario C, where we had a 50-50 allocation and we rebalanced back to 50-50 each and every year. So there we were with 10.2. We ended up with more money, 22 million bucks versus the 20. Scenario D I put in here because this is a particular sore spot for me. If you are doing the right job with asset allocation and you are spreading your equities across different sizes and different styles, and you're doing all the stuff you need to do rebalancing, and you buy bond funds, open-ended bond funds for the fixed income portion of the portfolio. And by the way, I don't care how good the wholesaler is or how smart the manager is. You buy an open-ended bond fund, this is what you're going to get. Scenario D, 50-50 allocation, rebalancing back to 50-50 with bond funds, 7.28. You did absolutely the right thing. You bought all the things you said you would buy, except your bonds didn't have maturity dates or coupons. It's known as permanence and definition. You need a permanent yield and coupon, and you need a definable maturity date. Ask yourself in a bond fund, when does your client get their money back? Let's see. Never? When does it mature? Same answer. Come on, guys. Seriously. Open-ended bond funds? No. And scenario E, as you saw before, which we call the A to B approach. Now remember, here I was primarily at a 65% fixed income allocation. So I was less aggressive, supposedly, than the 50-50 here or here. 1044, 23, 228, 839. Oh, and 8 cents. You can round it up to 10. Guys, this stuff works. And it works no matter how insane the markets get. It also works because you've always got a discipline that you can talk to your best clients about. And I will promise you that none of the people that your best clients know who aren't your clients are following this type of guidance. At the very least, they might be rebalancing back to some initial asset allocation based on some forecast somewhere, which frankly, I have to tell you, is better than nothing. But for the most part, I still think it's bullshit. The reality is, why would you take any more risk than you absolutely have to get your clients to their goal? You don't run around the track faster than everybody else, about to step over the finish line and turn around and run the other way. Doesn't make any sense, but we see it every single day. Smash the like button if you agree. Hit the subscribe button. Be a regular person, and you'll see more of these coming your way. Have a great day, guys. See you later.